Welcome everybody. This is Nostr power users. Here kicking off the first Nostr, or Nostr if you will, panel of Bitcoin Amsterdam. We've got Avi, Jeff, and Marce. And I want to take a second for them to introduce themselves and let you know kind of what role they play in the community. They've been on this Nostr thing for a while. So,
hey folks, Avi Burra. I'm a writer, I'm a podcaster. I joined Nostr the day after Jack Dorsey made that grant to Fiat Jeff. So I think December 15th, around 1 p.m. Eastern time, but who's counting? That's when my NPub was created. Yeah, so I mean, I was sick of Twitter. I was sick of how dark everything was. The violence on the timeline, the algorithm just feeding me outrage. And then Nostr was a throwback to like the internet of the late 90s. I was on ICQ. I was in the chat rooms back then. It was just happy stuff, people shitposting and having a good time. And then something happened to the internet over the next 20 years or so, right? And it just went to this really dark place. And then Nostr felt like such a fresh throwback to that time. And so I haven't stopped shitposting since then. I started a Nostr Nest podcast called Plebchain Radio in March with my co-host QW. It's every Friday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. And then I've been writing a book, and I thought I'd release one chapter a week. And I started doing that on Nostr and found that people were liking it, were commenting on it, and that just kept me going. So yeah, Nostr's been great. Met some amazing people. They're now dear friends at this point. Yeah. Absolutely.
So we'll touch on this later, but basically the poor performance of other centralized platforms, surveillance overreach, tends to drive a lot of users to Nostr. So I'm curious, Jeff, how did you find Nostr?
Yeah, so I found Nostr a little bit later, kind of January-ish, I think, and I noticed it first probably because of the Jack news, and kind of went, okay, I'm like busy with something else. I was actually trying to fundraise for a startup that I shut down at the end of January that didn't go well, and it was, it's one of those moments in life where you're like, this could be looked at as a total failure, but on the other side, it was probably the reason that I had that moment of having the time to dig into Nostr and try to understand it. And the more I looked at it, the more I got excited, and actually I didn't come at it from the social aspect. What I saw in Nostr was an opportunity to sort of rebuild that early internet from a really open and completely decentralized point of view. So I think from the technical aspect is where I came from, and started trying to build little Nostr apps right from the get-go. I built a site called nostr.how to get started, which was, really just me scratching my own itch of, okay, I'm technical, getting your Nostr key pair set up, finding a client, like understanding that whole shift is really non-trivial for most people. And so I wrote a couple of little guides, and the site's been translated, I think, into like 6 or 7 languages now at this point. And since then, I've just been building Nostr clients full-time. And so, yeah.
Love the work. Thank you for it, by the way. So developers obviously take an interest in this free and open source protocol. We'll get back into this. Nostr's for non-devs as well. So Marce, how did you get into it?
Well, I am not a developer, not technical at all, but I was actually listening to a podcast in November from one of my dear friends, and he's a Hispanic podcaster called Lunatico, and he was interviewing a Nostr developer called Verbiricha, and I was like, what's this? Sounds interesting. So I went ahead and I created my account, which was super complicated, and I had no idea what I was doing. Not technical, like I said, and I did that, and then I just left it, and that was it. And then in December, a friend that works with Bitcoin Jungle, one of the creators of Bitcoin Jungle in Costa Rica, told me that Jack Dorsey had sent out a note saying, like, who wants to help me plan a conference in Costa Rica, a Nostr conference, and well, that's right up my alley. I do marketing and PR for Bitcoin companies, and I'm from Costa Rica, and I kind of like Nostr, even though it's complicated, the idea, the concept was still cool. So I just signed up, and I'm like, okay, let's do this. and I met you, and just started building conferences. I guess that's what we do. We develop conferences, and then when the conference in Costa Rica came, the amazing crew of the Nostr report reached out to me if I could help them report on the Nostr conference for Nostrica, and afterwards they asked me to join. So now I have been called the first Nostr reporter, yes. And here I am.
Amazing, amazing. So, quick question for the audience. How many of you have used Nostr in any form? Little?
Yes. How many have not actually used Nostr at all? How many are just here because they're curious? Okay, cool. That's good.
Check.
You good?
Okay, cool. So I want to talk about what it is that's keeping Bitcoiners from at least trying the protocol, because, you know, if you're in Bitcoin for freedom of speech, freedom of communication, and monetary technology, if you're in here for anything outside of financial reasons, it would seem to me very important to jump on this Nostr thing, because it allows for freedom of speech, not Elon's version of freedom of speech where you lose your account for days on end, but true freedom of speech, which comes with its own trade-offs and sort of moderation issues. So I'll take it to the panel. What do you think is preventing all Bitcoiners from trying this?
So I can take a stab at that, Alex. I've had several conversations with Bitcoiners who are reluctant to join Nostr, and it falls into a couple of different themes. I don't agree with any of these, but this is what I've heard. Right? One is from the more technical Bitcoiners who are reluctant to join Nostr. They don't see a future monetization for the platform. They're like, well, the ZAP-based economy, I don't think that's going to work. It's not going to scale. You have to use a subscription-based model or some other fiat-style model, which is ironic coming from Bitcoiners, right? So here we are experimenting with value for value, right? Mm-hmm. No guarantee for success, but it's a playground for experimentation. So that's one piece of feedback from the technical Bitcoiners I've heard. The other from the non-technical Bitcoiners is it is so hard to get onboarded, right? Just the barrier to creating an NPub, making sure you keep your NSEC safe, practice safe NSECs, as some people say, and just the different clients, the onboarding experience. I think they've struggled with that. I've heard this feedback from non-technical Bitcoiners repeatedly.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I disagree. That's a little bit of FUD from the part of the people who have not tried it yet. I would argue that maybe back in December, almost a year ago, it probably would have been harder to get up and started with Nostr than your average social media platform. But today, I think it's much faster and easier because you don't have to turn over any information. If you use Damus, for example, today, there's no data collected on you as the user, so you're generating a private public key pair and you're off to the races. You can plug into any client and plug in Chuck, start posting. So what about you, Jeff? What do you think?
I mean, I totally agree with that. I think back at the beginning of the year, it was very difficult. There were very few clients. Damus wasn't even in the App Store. It was very difficult to get into the test flight even at that point. And so you were stuck, generating your key pair, trying to understand, and most Bitcoiners at least understand the whole key pair, protocol, like understand that whole aspect of it really easily, but no one else does. They're like, my what? Like, what is this? Where's my password? Like, where do I put my email? So like that part was difficult, and like web clients are hard on Nostr still because you've got to have some sort of extension to keep your private key in, or you're just pasting your private key around the internet, which is a terrible idea. Yeah. But if you're using a mobile client like Damus or Primal or Amethyst on Android, it's going to generate your key. You've got to save that somewhere safe, like a password manager, but then just keep it on your phone and use it there. It's fine. Mm-hmm. And I think the barrier to entry has gone down tremendously for just the kind of casual social use case, at least.
Got it. Marce, as a reporter on Nostr and someone who pushes a ton of content to the platform, what do you think about the contention that Avi mentioned some Bitcoiners have, that the financial incentive is not there?
That is one of the aspects, definitely. I think a lot of people are bigger, older OG Bitcoiners are used to getting a lot of attention. So it's like a trade-off, right? You go into like a more grassroots approach, but you don't have the amount of attention that you get when you're on like your regular social media platforms. I also get a lot that people think Nostr is just social media, and there's a lot of Bitcoiners that are like, oh, I'm not interested in social media, I have enough with Twitter, or I don't even go on Twitter. So that's another thing, like they haven't realized that Nostr goes beyond the social media aspect. There's other stuff, and that's the part that they're not thinking. And then, but mainly I do think it's the fact that, yeah, it's small and you may not be monetizing. But I mean, when Bitcoin started, like it was worth nothing. So I don't think that should be a reason not to be there. It's more of I'm used to having a large crowd and I appreciate the large crowd.
Right.
But in Nostr, it might not be a larger crowd, but it hugs you more. It's a sweeter crowd.
Exactly. I would say, nascent platform, so smaller audience for sure. However, they're diehards. I mean, we had Gabriel Shifton and Stella Assange join the platform last week. This is Julian Assange's wife and brother, and right away they were taking the community. People were showing them how to set up their Lightning addresses, how to receive payments immediately, and they were showered with zaps and free sats. It's great. I'm also a content creator myself, so we go live, and you can live stream onto Nostr. We go live every morning on zap.stream, and people show up, chat, send you sats. And the beauty of it is, I didn't have to get a blue check. I didn't have to give up my address. I didn't have to connect a Stripe account or give any personal information to receive this. So I think it's hard for us sometimes to, from our sort of privileged Western world position, to understand the value in that. But try to imagine you need, you live in Saudi Arabia, you have something to say, you need freedom of speech, and you can't dox yourself. This becomes incredibly powerful technology. So, go ahead.
There's one point I want to make on that, Alex, which is, as Bitcoiners, I think one of the key things at top of a lot of our minds is just getting as many people in the world to use Bitcoin as possible, right? Spreading adoption. And I think one of the things that Nostr has shown us is culture is really upstream of adoption. And what I mean by that is culture is the stories we tell, it's the content we create, right? You do the live stream. I have the weekly Nest, which is a live show, and then recorded. And there's several others, the content that Marce creates with the Nostr report, right? But it's through these types of stories that we can spread Bitcoin adoption, right? You connect with people at an emotional level through the stories, and you administer the orange pill in the heart rather than in the head, right? And Nostr is such a great channel for that.
Yeah. Like one of my favorite stories, and I know this has been told a million times, but like a really good friend of mine, Roya, who's on Nostr and has been for ages, like she had no idea what Bitcoin was, did not have anything to do with Bitcoin before, found Nostr through her brother, I think, who her brother's not even on Nostr anymore, but Roya just loved the social aspect of it and loved, like you were saying, like how much more positive it is than, some of the traditional centralized platforms, and then was like, oh, what is this like Zaps thing? And, then is like, oh, here's my wallet of Satoshi, okay, I kind of get that, like, whatever you want to say about, custodial wallets like that, they're a great entry point for people, and they take 30 seconds to set up. And so Roy all of a sudden starts seeing Zaps coming in, and she was at Nostrica, and I remember on the last day, me and another friend were talking to her, and she's like, so now that I've got like stuff here, like what am I supposed to do with it? And we're like, well, it's probably like a really small amount, like, it's fine to just keep it there. And she's like, I don't know, is it a small amount? And we're like, well, show us. It wasn't a small amount. And we were like, oh shit, okay, now we need to get you an actual wallet and like swap this out and do the right thing. So I think it's a really, really great gateway for people to find Bitcoin and find it through really fun means rather than this really heavy Austrian economics, like, money, destruction, state power side.
I have one thing to add as well. I think also a lot of the things with Nostr is that it's actual proof of work. If you want your content to be seen and if you want it to be out there, there's no algorithm that's going to push it. It's like you have to do really good content for people to watch it and enjoy it. So you have to work hard. It's not as easy as it is like when you already have an established platform and you have tons of followers and someone will like it and the algorithm will keep pushing it because it monetizes, because there's a platform, there's a corporation monetizing from your content. It's just you and your content, and that just shows whether if it's good or bad. And if you're getting attention and you're getting value for value, it's because you're doing something good. And I think that's new and might be uncomfortable for other content creators that are used to having platforms push them.
So we've talked about why Bitcoiners should be interested and at least give it a shot, give it a go. I'm curious, what would draw a non-Bitcoin audience to Nostr? Because this, to me, it's very early stages, but I want to start thinking about how do you scale this thing? How do you make it interesting to a non-endemic audience like Roya? Anecdotally, I've seen people who are not into Bitcoin come into Nostr and be embraced and come out totally orange-pilled. But I think a lot of people from the outside see us as a very insular community of Bitcoiners. So how do we shake that up and get new communities into the protocol?
Yeah, I think I would segment the non-Bitcoiner population into two parts, just broadly for the purpose of this. One is the non-Bitcoiners, but who are interested in censorship resistance and free speech, and I think for them you can make the case pretty strongly, right? Look, you don't have to be into Bitcoin, but here is an unruggable protocol, right, for your speech. Mm-hmm. So that I think with them the case is a little easier to make. Then for the people who are just true normies, right? I think the way we do it is, just going back to the earlier point I was making, is through content and stories that capture them at an emotional level and bring them in, rather than making the intellectual arguments about, well, this is, look at these relays, look at these clients, look at key pairs using Schnorr signatures. No one's going to, a normie is not going to care about that, right? Yeah. So it's going to be through unique and novel content. You draw them in, then they see the zaps, and they're like, hey, what's that? What's a zap? And you bring them into the fold that way.
Got it.
I slightly disagree. Maybe on just the first point. Like, I actually think that decentralization and the censorship resistance aspect will bring zero people almost to the platform overall. Like, most people in the world don't actually have a problem with that, especially in the Western world. There's like the handful of, kind of major celebrities that do something that, get them banned from platform. But, and I know it's happening more and more, but it's just not the thing that brings people to something new. Mm-hmm. I think we actually don't know what's going to bring, mass adoption. It's going to be some use case that doesn't look like anything we've got yet, and it needs to be something really different so that people are like, oh, what's that thing over there? Like, when TikTok came along, like short form video wasn't a thing, and now it's everywhere. And so we haven't found that in Nostr yet, and I think we're still in that early inning of just full experimentation where we have to look around for those like weird new use cases. And like Zaps is actually a pretty good one, even though it's, it's familiar enough that people get it pretty fast, but it is really fun. And it's something that people can run towards rather than like, I'm running away from censorship and things like that. It's like, no, this use case is legitimately fun, and this is the only place I can do it.
I also think like the people that need Nostr to be able to say whatever they want. So let's say you're in Cuba or you're like in Venezuela, you don't really have enough data to be on Nostr. Relays suck up your data, and that's something that needs to be worked on because they need a tool like Nostr, but they really can't use it. If like they have very limited data, their phones might not be up for it. So even though they need platforms like this, or like they have computers but they don't have access to the internet all the time, those people, even though this is like Nostr will be exactly what they need, they don't really have access to it. So yes, being censorship resistant and like freedom of speech is beautiful, and I love it, and it brought me to Nostr, but I don't really have an issue with any of those things. So it's really pretty for us to sit here and say that it's censorship resistant and freedom of speech, but like really, who's stopping us from saying whatever we want? Like, I can fly back to my country and be okay. No one's gonna like stop me at the airport and be like, oh, you said you don't like the president. Yeah, I don't like him. No one's gonna say anything about that. So that's part of the bugs that are features right now that need to be fixed. But in general, I think we also need to think about the other stuff that can be built. I know I said this already, but the social media aspect is very important. But people don't care about their data. Like Instagram, Facebook, Meta came out with Threads, and everybody jumped on it like without thinking. Like to me, the moment I got a message inside my Instagram telling me to join Threads, and like just by one click, it was so easy. I wasn't even checking it. It was just one button. It was like invading me. Why are you pushing this on me? And everybody just jumped on it. So the social aspect might be like, yeah, we need to find that like one thing that makes Nostr different, like that one client that creates this specific type of content that attracts everyone. But right now we're building, I don't think it's there yet for everybody to just jump on it. But the fact that we are all here means that there is an interest and we can all build something better. But there's a lot to be done before we get to mass adoption.
Yeah, I hear you on this privacy versus convenience trade-off. I mean, people, as Bitcoiners, we know people are very, very used to making these, you know, get me on Instagram, get me on Twitter, give you my address, face scan at the airport, no problem. And, you know, privacy is a one-way function. You can only lose it. You can't claw it back. So I'm curious, do you think Nostr and Bitcoin together maybe have a way of changing that, or will it always remain sort of this niche interest group and we're going to have to kind of cater to the masses here a little bit to increase adoption?
I mean, I definitely think it could change the way people think about it. Like it's, I mean, even just in the last few months, like being more exposed to it makes you think about it more and makes you sort of more aware of the trade-offs you're making. I think, you know, most people, like you just said, it's a convenience trade-off for most people. And to be honest, most people are just used to giving data at every single, you know, point. Like it's a bit of a joke in Italy where I live, like every single form you fill out has this like page on the back where it's like, here's all the privacy consents that you're giving. And you're like, this is literally on every form you ever touch, like for your kids' school stuff, for everything. And you're like, does anyone read this? Does anybody even know what any of this means? Like, why is this even here? And you're right, it's a one-way function. But like being aware of it is the very first step of like having, you know, the ability to go, actually, I'm going to make a conscious choice here to do something slightly different.
And I think that awareness comes in once, you know, new users come to Nostr and they're attracted for whatever reason, right? They see some content or some unique app or whatever that draws them in. Then they're around the community and hopefully that builds the awareness. Yes, I mean, their privacy is gone, right? One-way function, but at least the awareness is there.
Got it. So for the people in the room that don't use Nostr, I could understand if they're looking at the protocol, maybe they think it's even just a single platform and they're kind of wondering what's the core differentiator here. Why would I jump on this? This is maybe a replica of Twitter with fewer users, something like that. So I'm curious in your guys' minds, you know, we all have a lot more experience with the protocol. What are some of the differentiated kind of value additions in the protocol that you're not going to find anywhere else? You're not going to find on Twitter or Instagram or Threads or whatever.
Well, sorry, Abby.
I have a one-word answer to that, is zaps.
Yeah.
Economic signal over proof of
economics, and also like I'm guessing most people here are Bitcoiners, like, right? Am I wrong? No? Okay, cool. So yeah, SAPs definitely are going to draw you in, but it's also just so like good content. Like right now we are so early that the content that's there is so well, like people actually put in thought on what they say, how they say it, what they put out there, and being able to receive that. And if you want to create too, it's just like a unique opportunity to be there early and share your ideals and just have some like a community that thinks alike to be there with you. That's unique. Also, there's not that much fighting like on Twitter, so like if you don't like to fight, that's a good place.
Yeah, so you're not trying to cater to an algorithm as a user yet. I mean, there are cases where a Nostr client could spin up and have an algorithm that maybe you don't agree with, but you, the user, have a choice to go use a different client or build your own. So it's beautiful, that user algorithmic choice. I think it's kind of still coming, like the benefits of that aren't apparent to everybody yet, but because right now we're kind of, I think most of the clients, it's fair to say, don't have a real organizing principle. It's just what...
Sort of. I mean, I guess like on that
it.
same note, like I think it's one of the coolest things about Nostr when you start it's like after you're using it for a little while and you get comfortable starting to use different clients, the idea that your data and your entire social graph goes everywhere with you is kind of unique and mind-blowing once you get into it. Like the fact that you can just use your same inpub through the same extension to sign into every site, and it automatically has all of your followers and can, connect up all the different events that you're sending in other clients for different use cases is actually pretty amazing. And so, you get these weird use cases that just aren't possible with the siloed internet. Like the ability for, a client that I built called Lister to go and find your followers and look at their lists and then like help you build lists of lists using their lists is kind of unique. And then you can pop right back over to your social client and load up the feed of just one of those lists you've created. And so I think we've only barely scratched the surface there of like how that data interoperability and portability is going to like completely change the way we think about how to use the internet.
Yeah, because of the way that relays and clients interact with the system, you can build closed social networks. So there's a lot of, I think, white label app opportunities, say, I don't know, for sneakerheads. Maybe you want a group of all sneakerheads. You can have your own closed community of sneakerheads talking shoes, drops, whatever. There's a lot of fun like middleware use cases that haven't been born yet. So from the three of you, what are your favorite kind of, I guess, niche clients or things that you're using besides the regular social media, Nostr?
I love Habla. I like writing. I don't do it as much as I wish I could, but I love writing. And the fact that I can send my mom a link so she could read what I wrote without her having to be on Nostr, because, my God, that would be something else, right? But just sending her the link for her to read it, it's pretty cool. And then she shares it with her friends, and everyone can read it. And they have no idea they're on Nostr. And to me, that's like the core principle. Eventually, there will be people on Nostr that won't know they're on Nostr, and that's pretty cool. Like right now it's happening, and we're so early, and there's already a group of old ladies back home that read what I write and have no idea what they're on.
I think there's a lot of really interesting niche use cases and tools. I think like everybody in Nostr knows Pablo, and I think Pablo's one of the people that's the best at like experimenting with weird shit. He's not great at finishing many of those projects, but he's really, really good at getting them going and like doing bizarre stuff and making everybody think a bit differently. And he's got a thing called data vending machines that is basically like a very open system for allowing anybody to spin up sort of any AI or even human-driven kind of work system. A system of like jobs. And so instead of having to go, remember like, okay, I want to do, image generation. I need to go to Midjourney and like, sign up and do all the things and like, use it like an API. You just say to the world on your, on a bunch of Nostr relays, I'm looking for someone to generate an image of this. And the DVMs that are out there will come back to that request and say either I've generated the image for you for free, go for it, or hey, we can do that, but it's going to be 10,000 sats, and you can build these clients that interact sort of in an agent way on your behalf to do work, and you can chain those jobs together over time, and so you end up with these again use cases that you just can't build on Web 2, and so I think like there's a bunch of weird stuff there, and like filtering relays and geolocated relays, and like there's all sorts of stuff we can do with relays as well, which is we haven't gotten to yet.
Just to pick on that thread a little bit, so what is the incentive for a developer to come over to Nostr?
Well, one, I mean, developers like to build on fun new toys, and it's a pretty fun new toy. It's also extremely simple, like it's just JSON, and it's a very straightforward protocol. There's very little that's actually required to understand or to adhere to. So, like we always joke, like, the Blue Sky protocol for, Jack Dorsey's other thing, is like kind of a joke. Like you can't get access to it. It's really complicated. It's built in a closed system by like 5 people on a whiteboard. Whereas Nostr is the bazaar to that cathedral where it's just like everybody's throwing things and thinking up new stuff and trying stuff, and some of it's going to be good ideas, lots of it's terrible ideas, but we're sort of building it as we go and sort of organically figuring out how to do it. I think the other piece for developers is there's a really strong built-in network effect. So whereas when you build a closed system, you have to go out and find new users very manually and get them to sign up. With Nostr, you're like, hey, here's my new client, and everybody's already there, because they've already got an in-pub. And so you've got this very quick adoption rate. And if your tool's not good, people show up and then they check it out and they leave and they never come back. But if your tool is good, you've got, thousands of users that are already, technically signed up for it.
Because it's not top down, like you said, that the cathedral versus bazaar, very apt. What you have is something closer to actual free market competition, and we've seen some really interesting, I don't know if you all have examples of kind of market correcting mechanisms in Nostr, where something came out or something happened on a client, bit of a snafu, maybe the direction, the users weren't keen on it, and so they gave feedback, and in real time these things were corrected.
I see that all the Abby, I'm so sorry. I see that happening all the time. Just as my own experience, like I need a tool for DMs, and I just happen to ask a dev, or like going back to DMs. My DMs on Damos were kind of bizarre, and I just ran into Will, and I was like, "Hey, can you fix this?" Like that's pretty cool. And even if that's not the case, from like the Nostr report, we need tools to, like, we create content that's massive, and we have issues sometimes. An update comes and we can't post our report, or there's like things that happen all the time. Like I'm gonna go back to like Damas did an update a few months ago, and events with a certain amount of characters, notes were not being published, and our report would always be more characters than the allowed. And the guys just texted Will, and it's like, hey, this is happening. Or I think it was someone texted either Will or Vanessa, and they're like, hey guys, this is happening, can we get some help? And it got fixed. And then that keeps happening. There's a discussion, I think, about NIP 53 right now. I'm not sure which NIP it is, but it's about being able to edit long format notes. And there's a whole conversation going on whether this is good or bad. And it's pretty cool to see the devs just all go in there and have a conversation. They have their dev perspective, but we can also go in and be like, as users, it's like, guys, well, actually, we think this or that, and it gets taken into consideration. And I think that's the beauty of an open source protocol, that everyone has, like, you don't need a PhD to be able to comment on how something is being done, like something that you use. No one is telling you, this is the pill that you have to take because a specialist went and studied and decided that this was best for you. Actually, we all just get together and decide as users, as the people taking the pill, and as the people that know if the pill works or not.
I do have an example from a couple of months ago, so I'm not going to name the client name here. It's not Damas, Will, don't worry. I'm not talking about Damas.
It's the other one.
It's one of them.
I knew you were teeing this one up with that question.
So a couple of months back, there was a popular client that had this feature for reporting users, right? And I don't know the exact details of this, but it was something like if 5 people reported you, it flagged your profile, and then you were effectively shadow banned. Right, and so there was an open discussion, and then someone said, "This is crazy. This is not the world we want to live in. I'm going to fork your client, and just remove this feature from it." And they did it. Yeah. So it's you saw those market correcting forces right there.
Yeah, problem solved. So I'm curious. This is very nice and convenient now to have such a tight-knit relationship with all the devs that are building the clients actively. How do you three see that scaling into the future? I think, Will's probably answering here in the audience, DMs right now trying to fix things, but like eventually there's a possibility that these open source protocols do get captured by corporations, and how do we avoid that, such as, what's happened with email between Gmail, Yahoo, and just there's a couple clients that everyone uses. How do we avoid that with Nostr?
I think one of the most important things is, and like one of the things that actually drew me into Nostr even further beyond the tech stuff is it really does sort of change the business model on the internet. It does break in a lot of ways the monopoly, the potential, and the runaway network effects that products like Google and Facebook and Twitter sort of benefited from over the last 20 years. If it doesn't completely become captured in its really kind of infant stage here, it sort of won't be able to be captured because of those, that data interoperability and portability. You can always fork someone's client. All your data is spread around a bunch of relays. You can run your own archival relay to keep all of your data, yourself. And so if you don't like the way something is being done, just leave, go somewhere else. You take all of your data and all of your identity with you. And so that feature alone means that businesses now have to compete on actually delivering value to customers rather than where else are you going to go? You know what I mean? Like if you've got 100,000 Twitter followers, like where else are you going to go? Like you don't have a choice. And so I think figuring out like what does that mean for business models is actually a really interesting challenge and one we have to figure out, like one we have to actually work on.
Yeah, that raises an interesting question. What are the Nostr business models? You don't see quite as many startups in the space, like traditional startups. A lot of Nostr clients aren't looking to have venture funding because they want to be free to build in the direction they want. They don't want to owe some sort of service or spec to anyone. So,
like, think about how venture funding works, right? Like, venture is all about the extreme outsized return, right? So they're like, we'll invest in 100 things, 98 of them are going to go to zero, or 90 are going to go to zero, 8 are going to be like, meh, okay, we got our money back, and like 2 are going to be gigantic. And it's because of those runaway network effects that can happen. And so it almost doesn't make sense. I mean, I think there's versions of this that make a lot of sense for venture to invest in, but like, I think the jury's still out on like, is that actually the right capital model for, projects like Nostr? I don't know. We have to figure that out, right? Like, we're gonna have to experiment and see what happens there.
Max Webster seems to think so.
Yeah, I know. And I've had a couple of chats with Max about that. But like, again, like, I'm grateful that like Max is there doing it because somebody needs to do it and like be that risk capital to see what happens. And we also need somebody that believes enough to help us get through this like early phase of, like, the OpenSats grants, incredible. Like Jack's donation, incredible, because that's the thing that allows, people like me to work on this full time.
I tend to agree with Jeff. I think it's still too early to say that the venture style model is going to work for Nostr. I think we need low time preference individuals like Jack Dorsey and others, right, who come in and say, you know what, it's not about the quick returns right now. I'm willing to take a 5-10 year horizon and maybe do it as a grant to start with, and then let the ecosystem mature a little bit. And I think then it'll become clear how VC money can come in.
I have something to say. I know we've been saying it's too early, but do you guys see this stage? It's like so packed right now.
True.
Like, I see people coming in and just standing, and that's insane. Like, yes, we're early, but there's so much interest into, like, how does this work? What can we do? And yeah, maybe there's not a specific business model, but there's so many things that need to be done yet, not only from the social aspect. Do we want traditional marketing that cuts down on freedom? It's too much to think about to just sit down and be like, this is the business model, because each client will probably need a different business model.
So for the people in the audience that haven't used Nostr yet, what would your personal recommendation be for like a client or a way to get started? What should they try?
Well, it depends on what tools you use. So for example, if you use Damus, it's for like Apple users, so that's for your iPhone. But there's also on iPhone, like you can use Damus, you could use Primal, you could also use Nostr. Those are like Primal and Nostr and Damus are like my go-to clients most of the time. If you have Android, there's Amethyst, but you can also use Primal on Android, so that's another option. I think Nostr is also available for Android. That's for phones, and then on your computer, I love snort.social, that's my favorite. And then I love snort.social for like publications and browsing the feed. But I also like Iris, the way it works, it's pretty, so those are my favorite ones.
And you can delete your posts on Iris.
You need to, you can delete it.
Well,
yes.
you think you can
Yeah,
do it.
sort of.
It
Sort
makes
of
you feel
can delete.
better when you get a
That
typo,
helps.
yeah.
That helps when you're public, like doing stuff for like the Nostr account, and then you realize you forgot to put the npub or the picture or stuff like that. It kind of helps.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I would suggest just starting with your mobile phone. Like
Yeah.
you know, it's the easiest way to get going to generate keys, to keep those keys pretty safe. You know, once you go down the rabbit hole and you start trying to use all the web clients, you know, it starts to get a little more complicated, you know, just trying to keep your insect safe. So I would say just start with the social clients, you know, have fun, and, you know, make sure you get your Lightning wallet set up and everything so that you can get zaps. And I guess the one other client that I think everybody should go try is Zap.stream, which is
100%.
the streaming client
100%.
built by the same guy who does Snort.social, and it's just really quite unique to be able to sit there on a stream and, you know, zap the person that's doing the stream in a way that it just isn't possible. Like it's, you know, anywhere else. It's just amazing.
And we've set funding goals within Zap.stream. So if you were to spin up a stream and you want to raise money, I don't know, for a trip or to attend a conference or something, people will join the chat and very cheerfully send you little notes and zaps and pretty large amounts of Bitcoin too. You can make, I can see it a year from now making serious money. I mean, we get like $50 a day on stream sometimes, which is substantial if you're a small Twitter user. You know, you don't get anything for your content. You get virtue signaling and squashed by an algorithm. So it's quite fun to use Zap.stream. How about you?
So
Sorry.
for clients, I mean, I would say if you have an iPhone, use Damus. If you have an Android, Pesto will till he makes a Damus for Android.
I think also if you're on the web, make sure to use a browser extension, all these tiny things. But Get Albi is pretty easy to use.
Yeah.
And they have like a vault and everything. So it's pretty like a wallet, everything set up. You can put your NSEC there, so you can practice safe NSEC and just have it there on your browser.
Do we want to, like, we have 2 minutes left. Might be important to mention that just because, I don't know about you guys, but I got started on Astral.Ninja, RIP, and just put my NSEC right in that thing. yeah.
That was so
And
hard.
I'm just waiting for the whole account to get rugged any day because I don't know what happened. So when it comes to key management, what do you recommend?
Well, I use Get Albi because it's very easy and it's just easy. Like I'm not technical. I say that every time I get a mic on my hand that I'm not technical. So I always look for the easiest option. And Get Albi was definitely the best I could find. So I recommend that. Also, the team is very, again, we're early, so it's very easy to communicate with the team. If you have questions or you want to do anything, you just like send them a message and they'll answer back. So that's my recommendation.
Yeah, definitely. Albi's great. Like it's a Lightning wallet. It's a Nostr signing, you know, thing. It works in most of the browsers. It's super easy and fast. And so, you know, you can, and if you really want to, like they've got options where you can connect Albi through to, you know, your own Lightning node if you're running your own node. So there's a lot of different options there based on like how, you know, how much you want to play hard mode or easy mode.
Yeah, and the one thing I'd say is if you're trying new clients, do not copy paste your regular NSEC into that new client. Create a burner NSEC and just use that to test new clients. And if you're happy, then you can port your account, your regular account there.
Absolutely.
And keep a physical copy of your NSEC somewhere hidden. That's a very important thing. If you want to have it, if you have a safe place where you can keep it, that don't do it on paper. Don't just be very careful, but keep it somewhere because you never know what could happen. Like the internet is really cool, but just be safe with where you keep your stuff.
There's somebody out there that's sharding their NSEC and has like a geographically distributed multi-sig for it. But I can't wait till we see hardware assigning device. I mean, some of them are being developed, but you know.
Yeah, I'm actually fairly bearish on the hardware signing devices for Nostr because who's gonna walk around with a thing plugged into their phone to send notes? I mean, you're signing everything, even little reactions and stuff. So
it's the YubiKey people. It's gonna be the exact same.
Yeah, look, somebody's gonna do it for sure. I mean, I think it's a fun toy and it's a fun experiment, but I just don't think most people are going to do that. The project that I really like that is, partially developed again, Pablo, but I think is actually probably where most of this is going to go, is called Insec Bunker.
Yeah.
And it's effectively just uses Nostr and relays as sort of a gossip client to, you keep your Insec in one place, you use another Insec in clients, and when you want to sign with your main Insec, that client is actually just sending a message to say, hey, I need this signed by my real Insec. And that kind of traverses around to get to your Insec bunker, which then says, do you have the ability, does this key that you put into this client have the ability to perform that action? And, are there, you can set up all sorts of rules around how the keys get used and who gets to use them. So you can sort of build delegated keys in a sense. And that is almost certainly the way that this is going to go longer term, especially for larger users or businesses and things like that.
Definitely. Guys, we're just about at time here. Any closing remarks? I'm thinking...
Yeah, look, if you're not on Nostr already, I have 3 questions for you. Do you like to be free? Do you like to be happy? Do you like to receive Bitcoin? If you answer no to any of those questions, then please do not join Nostr.
I think the only thing I'd say is if you're not on Nostr, join Nostr. Make sure you get a Lightning wallet set up, and then say that you are brand new on Nostr and use the hashtag #GrowNostr, and you will definitely get some Bitcoin almost immediately.
Free Bitcoin, there you go.
Yeah, free Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I also have to say that if you are on Nostr or you're not on Nostr but you're interested, we're going to be in Japan in a few days, in 20 days, and we're going to be in Tokyo and in Hong Kong, and it's going to be a full-on Nostr conference for more talks like this and more access to devs and more questions to be answered. If you can't be there physically, you can join us online. Just be there. You don't want to miss this.
And it's completely free. That conference is free. Well, folks, thanks for coming. That's our Nostr primer for the event. So we're going to have a couple more talks about the protocol throughout today and tomorrow. And I think Edward Snowden's pretty excited to get into it a little bit too. So look forward to that talk. But thank you.
Cool.
Thank you, Miami, for the last 3 years in this amazing city. The whole world shut down, but Miami welcomed us with open arms. We want to show Bitcoin to the whole world. We are taking the conference on the road to set the stage for Bitcoin in a new city. Nashville. Bitcoin 2024 is coming to Nashville in Tennessee, a city that is known as a music and freedom city. Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville from July 25th to 27th.